This is the course on the systematic perspective in the Master of Theology program. In this short talk, I want to introduce you to the task before you for this course. What a joy to welcome you to this course, which guides you towards formulating a systematic perspective on your research topic. By the end of this course, you will have articulated and defended a theological position with respect to your research topic. That's the macro task before you, to articulate and defend a theological position or conclusion, if you wish, with respect to your research topic. Let's talk a little bit about the context, where this course fits into the MTH program as a whole. I want to do this by summarizing where you've come from. In the first course on Integrated Theology, you learned about the integrated approach, how we work to bring together the various theological disciplines to present a holistic understanding of God's nature, will, and purposes as they inform a particular aspect of theology. In that course, you also selected a research theme, a topic, and you've been working on various dimensions of that topic ever since. In the Biblical Perspective 1 course, you interpreted a key biblical text that speaks to your topic. You developed skills for exegesis and then applied them to one of the texts that you deem to be the most important on your theme. Then in Biblical Perspective 2, you studied your topic using a chosen approach to biblical theology. In that course, you formulated a personal approach to doing biblical theology, and then you applied that method to form a larger, broader understanding of what either a corpus or perhaps the whole Bible said about your topic. Then you did the historical perspective. You studied how believers at other points in history have understood your topic. In doing so, you acknowledged that you are not the first person and we are not the first generation to grapple with these issues. Godly men and women have gone before us and have thought deeply about some of these issues, and we need to take seriously the way they've reflected on them. We may or may not agree, but we must listen and consider. That brings us to this course, the systematic perspective. You have accumulated a wealth of data from Scripture and from church history. But at this point, the data you have are somewhat disconnected, and you need to explore how they fit together to form coherent truth. This quest for coherent truth, for a coherent explanation of the data, is the task of systematic theology. This course constitutes the climax of your theoretical journey in this integrated master's degree. In it, you will articulate and defend your theological interpretation of your topic, summarizing the truths and synthesizing them into a model of the truth. In other words, the task before you is to bring together all that you've learned so far into a coherent understanding of your topic that accounts for all the known data, or at least all the data that you've been able to gather and evaluate. The first step is to reduce all the data from the Bible and from history into the smallest possible number of principles. In other words, timeless truths. You need to take all the data that you've gathered about your topic, you've drawn it from Scripture and from church history, and you need to sift through the massive information that you have to identify the essential timeless truths on your topic. Then you need to reduce that body to a manageable number of core principles and state them as propositions. Those principles become the key working truths that you need to synthesize in the next stage of the process. So stage 2 is to synthesize the truths that you've identified to form a coherent model of the truth regarding your topic. When you have identified the timeless truths, you need to examine the relationship between them. Our premise here is that truth is coherent. There will always be a logical way in which the individual truths fit together to form a logical whole. In other words, the whole truth is a coherent synthesis of the individual truths that you identify. The third step in the process is to correlate your model with relevant theories from the human, social, and natural sciences. So far, we've mostly been working with theological data, theological evidence. And that's natural. As theologians, we work primarily with theological evidence from Scripture, from church history. But we are not alone in the quest for truth. Other fields of study, other disciplines, what we are calling here the sciences, the natural, the human, and the social sciences, are also seeking to understand the whole truth about God's world. Scientists observe the world and develop theories to explain their observations. As a theologian, you need to assess which scientific theories merit attention in formulating a theological understanding of your topic, and then consider how those theories relate to the biblical evidence. In other words, you need to correlate your model with relevant theories from other sciences. In the light of that explanation, the fourth step is to refine your model or explanation to account for appropriate scientific theories. Once you've critically examined the scientific theories, you use them to refine your theological interpretation or model to account for them. If they concur fully with your theological conclusions, you can integrate them into your discussion as corroborating evidence. If they conflict with your theological conclusions, you need to judge whether to reconsider your interpretation of the biblical evidence or whether to reject or perhaps modify the scientific theory as being at odds with the revealed truth of God. Do not make this judgment flippantly. Give it serious consideration. Step 5 is to anticipate reasonable objections to your synthesis of the data into your theological model. Objections can come from various sources. They might come from the scientific community, in particular from the atheistic or secular scientific community, which for the most part does not appreciate a God-centered interpretation of reality. But objections might also come from biblical scholars who disagree with your interpretation of particular texts. They might come from theologians who disagree with your theological conclusions, favoring alternate views. Your task here is to anticipate reasonable and likely objections to your synthesis of the data. And then, step 6, to defend your theological model, arguing that it is the most coherent explanation of the data. Every theological model is an interpretation of the data, a human attempt to explain some aspect of reality. You are not the first to attempt to explain it. As people who favor other views or theories will object to some aspects of your model, part of the task of making your case for your model is to anticipate their objections and show why your synthesis of the data is more coherent and convincing than the alternatives. You'll convince some, you probably won't convince everybody, but you must attempt to defend the integrity and coherence of your model as the best explanation available for the data. In conclusion then, systematic theology is work. It's 3 kinds of work in my opinion. Firstly, it is hard work. Clear thinking is hard work. Thinking is demanding, which is probably why so few do it. Even in theology, most of us lack the discipline to think deeply. You cannot do good systematic theology unless you are prepared to do the hard work of trying to think clearly and logically through complex problems. Second, articulating truth is honorable work. We are trading in truth, and our conclusions have eternal consequences. Scripture warns that not many should aspire to be teachers, because they will be judged more strictly. If this is hard work with strict judgment, why would anyone volunteer for the painstaking work of analyzing all the relevant data and trying to summarize the whole truth of God about a topic? Well, simply because it is noble work that benefits the people of God when it is done properly. So if we do our job well, it's honorable work, it's valuable work, it's work that serves the church, but only if we do the hard work of clear thinking well. Thirdly, and lastly, concise writing is hidden work. It's hidden work. The result of the systematic theology task doesn't look particularly impressive to the uninformed eye. We end with a concise statement or model of a profound and complex reality. Whereas the biblical scholar can write reams about individual details, brevity is a virtue for the systematician. He must synthesize and summarize a vast body of data succinctly. It's unfair to compare exegetical papers with systematic papers in terms of word count. You see, for the biblical scholar, biblical studies encourages him to discuss each detail, whereas systematic theology rejoices in the ability to reduce the discussion to the essentials. It can be compared to the genius of a world-class tennis player. When you watch him on the court, he looks effortless, like he's hardly working at all. Similarly, when a systematician has done his job brilliantly, it looks like he's hardly done any work at all. But of course, nothing could be further from the truth. Systematic theology is work. It's hard work, it's honorable work, it's hidden work. We do it because we love the truth of God and the God of the truth, and we want His people to be able to understand His nature, will, and purposes as it relates to important topics in life and ministry.